Ray Chapman rule. In 1920, Ray Chapman stepped into the batter's box and never stepped out again. He was 29 in his prime and playing for Cleveland when a pitch from Yankee submariner Carl Mays struck him in the head. The ball was scuffed, darkened with tobacco juice, and hard to see against the evening shadows. Chapman never ducked. He collapsed at the plate, died the next day, and became the only MLB player killed by a pitch. The league's response wasn't sentimental. It was practical. Umpires were now required to replace any ball that got dirty. Clean balls, every few pitches. Visibility wasn't just about aesthetics anymore. It was about survival. Pitchers could no longer use the grime as camouflage. Then came the spitball. Already controversial, it was outlawed almost immediately after Chapman's death. A handful of veterans were grandfathered in, but for everyone else, doctoring the ball became a punishable offense. Chapman didn't die in vain. His name forced a reckoning with how far pitchers had pushed the envelope. This was more than a single tragedy. It was the moment MLB realized that style couldn't come before safety. The game's unwritten code had failed to protect one of its own. So the rulebook took over. Clean ball, a legal grip, and a visible target. Chapman didn't get that, but everyone after him did. His legacy isn't just a black armband. It's every clean white ball that crosses the plate. Quiet, unacknowledged, but unmistakably his. Pat Vendita rule. Baseball has never loved ambiguity. Enter Pat Vendita, a switch pitcher. That's not a typo. Vendita could throw with both arms depending on the batter. One inning he was a righty with a slider, the next a lefty with a cutter. He wore a custom six-fingered glove and toggled arms like flipping a switch. The problem? No one knew who had to declare first, the pitcher or the batter. In one infamous 2008 minor league game, Vendita faced a switch hitter named Ralph Henriquez. The two danced in circles. Henriquez switched sides. Vendita switched arms. Again and again. The standoff dragged on until umpires improvised a ruling. The pitcher had to declare first, and the batter could respond. That incident forced the league to formalize a new rule, now known as Pat Vendita rule. Under official baseball rule 5.07F, an ambidextrous pitcher must declare which hand he'll use at the start of an at-bat and can't switch during it unless there's an injury. Once declared, it's locked in. No more pitcher-batter mirror matches. It's a small, weird rule, but a necessary one. Without it, a single at-bat could last longer than an inning. Vendita wasn't the first to try both arms. Tony Mullane did it in the 1880s. But he was the one who finally pushed MLB to write it down. The rule didn't stop him. Vendita pitched in the majors for years, but every time he swapped arms, baseball made sure the rulebook was one step ahead. Bob Gibson rule. In 1968, Bob Gibson posted a 1.12 ERA. Let that sink in, 1.12. That's not just dominance, it's existential dread for hitters. The mound might as well have been a sniper's perch. Batters couldn't touch him, and it wasn't just Gibson. Pitchers across the league were feasting. The year of the pitcher became a marketing crisis. MLB's solution? Chop the mound down. Literally. The league lowered it from 15 inches to 10 and shrank the strike zone. Why? Because Gibson had made a fence disappear. Games turned into low-scoring stare-downs. Attendance dipped. People wanted dingers, not duels. The changes didn't just nerf Gibson, they reset the sport. Offense bounced back in 1969. Batting averages rose, runs returned, fans smiled. Gibson, still filthy. He adjusted, kept winning, and struck fear into hitters for another decade. But the rule stuck. To this day, pitchers throw from that lowered platform, all thanks to one man's statistical annihilation of baseball. There was no scandal, no trickery, just precision, pace, and a fastball that felt unfair. Gibson wasn't just mowing hitters down, he was forcing MLB to reckon with its entertainment value. The league didn't want another season where the MVP looked like a pitcher holding a no-hitter hostage, so they took away his high ground. The lowered mound didn't erase Gibson's legacy, it magnified it. He was so dominant, the league had to weaken the very place he stood. Every inch they took away was a silent admission. This guy broke the game. Doc Adams rule. Before stats, before stadiums, before the Civil War, there was Doc Adams. You've probably never heard of him, and that's kind of the point. But Adams didn't just play baseball in the 1850s, he engineered it. While Abner Doubleday gets the mythology, Adams got his hands on the rulebook and made baseball recognizable. His biggest contribution? Standardizing the layout. 9 players, 9 innings, 90 feet between bases. That wasn't a given. Early baseball was chaos. Varying rules, uneven fields, infinite innings. Adams put numbers to the madness. He helped author the 1857 convention rules that formalized these distances, setting the game's geometry in stone. It didn't stop there. He lobbied to eliminate the bound rule, a law that allowed fielders to record an out if they caught a ball on one bounce. Yes, really. Adams pushed for clean catches only. That one change made fly balls into highlights and turned defense into theater. Without him, baseball might still look like a glorified game of rounders. Instead, Adams drew the map. The modern field dimensions, inning structure, and even the position of shortstop, he invented that too, stemmed directly from his tweaks. He wasn't a star. He didn't throw no-hitters or crush dingers. But Adams did something rarer. He made baseball make sense. The rules he helped write are still on the books. No scandals, no loopholes. Just logic and tape measures. Every base path you've ever seen, every double play turned, traces back to a doctor with a ruler and a vision. Eddie Gadel rule. Bill Veeck didn't care about norms, he cared about headlines. And in 1951, he got one. The St. Louis Browns owner trotted out Eddie Gadel, a 3'7" stuntman, as a pinch hitter. Gadel wore jersey number 1/8 and stepped into the batter's box with an on-base percentage of 1.000. Why? Because his strike zone was microscopic. The pitcher laughed. The crowd laughed. The umpire didn't. 4 straight balls. Gadel walked to first, tipped his cap, and was immediately subbed out. It was a circus. It was brilliant, and it terrified the league. MLB responded within 24 hours. They implemented stricter contract approval protocols and game day roster registration rules. No more surprise signings, no more loophole lineups. The Gadel rule wasn't about height, it was about order. Teams now had to submit roster moves in advance and get them cleared by the commissioner's office. The stunt was dead. The Comedy Act got cut from the script. But for one afternoon, Gadel bent the sport. He never swung a bat, never scored a run. But he showed how fragile the rules were when tested with creativity and chaos. Eddie Gadel's plate appearance is still in the box scores. It's technically legitimate. But the rule he triggered closed the door behind him forever. He wasn't a player. He was a plot twist. Today, every transaction that crawls through MLB's bureaucracy has a little bit of Gadel in it. His legacy isn't in the swing, it's in the paperwork that now prevents another him. If this is the kind of baseball chaos you live for, go ahead and subscribe. We go deep on stories like these all the time. Shohei Ohtani rule. For over a century, MLB refused to imagine a world where a guy could pitch and hit like Babe Ruth, and actually do both at the same time. Then Shohei Ohtani showed up and made the league look unprepared. Under the old rules, if a pitcher started the game and got pulled, his spot in the batting order went with him. That meant if Ohtani pitched and hit second, once he left the mound, the DH slot was gone too. So teams had to choose, do you want Shohei on the mound or in the lineup later? You couldn't have both, which for a two-way unicorn made 0 sense. In 2022, MLB finally rewrote the rulebook just for him. The Ohtani rule allows a starting pitcher who also bats to stay in the lineup as the designated hitter even after he's done pitching. No sub, no lineup shuffle, no catch. Just pure logic finally catching up to talent. It wasn't about bending the game for a star. It was about removing a flaw that only one player had exposed. Nobody had made the rule matter until Ohtani showed it was broken. The result? More at-bats, more highlights, more Shohei. He could hit leadoff and close out the ninth without torpedoing his team's flexibility. Baseball got better because it got out of his way. Now, every time he steps into the box after a dominant start, he's playing by rules that literally didn't exist before he did. That's legacy in real time. Johnny Damon rule. In most sports, you can't run before the whistle. In 2009, Johnny Damon ran before the logic. It was Game 4 of the World Series, Yankees versus Phillies. Top of the 9th, tie game. Damon singled, then stole second. Standard stuff. But the shift had left third base completely uncovered, and Damon, without hesitation, kept going. He stole third on the same play. 2 bases, 1 pitch, no throw. It wasn't illegal, it wasn't even shady. It was just smart. Too smart. The moment exposed a glitch in defensive shifting. If you overcommit to one side, the other becomes a freeway. MLB didn't change the rules right away, but the ripple effect was massive. Teams began rethinking how and when to shift, and in 2023, MLB dropped the hammer. 2 infielders on each side of second, both feet on the dirt. Shifts weren't just tweaked, they were banned. Damon's play didn't break a rule. It broke the assumption that defenses couldn't be gamed that badly. His double steal didn't win the game outright, but it shattered the idea that positioning didn't need guardrails. It also gave future base runners a blueprint. If you're watching the ball, you're late. Damon saw the hole and went full speed into it. No hesitation, no apology. The stolen base didn't just flip the inning. It foreshadowed a rule change more than a decade later. And every shift-restricted infield today owes a quiet nod to the guy who stole third because nobody was looking. Ted Williams rule. Ted Williams didn't just hit, he hit like a machine. The splendid splinter had a swing so pure, pitchers started praying and defenses started plotting. Enter the shift. In 1946, Cleveland manager Lou Boudreau got tired of watching Williams torch his staff. So he yanked his entire defense to the right side of the field. 7 gloves crowding one half of the diamond. It looked like a joke, but it wasn't. Williams, famously stubborn, refused to change his approach. He kept trying to pull through the shift and still managed to hit over 340 most seasons. But the strategy stuck. The Williams shift became a blueprint. By the time David Ortiz came around in the 2000s, teams were shifting on nearly every lefty power bat. Infielders played short right field. Hitters lost singles to glorified second basemen parked 100 feet deep. It got ridiculous. So in 2023, MLB stepped in. The new rule, 2 infielders must be positioned on each side of second base with both feet on the dirt. The shift, as we knew it, was dead. This wasn't about nostalgia. It was about rhythm, about turning ground balls into hits again, about giving hitters a fighting chance in an arms race they didn't start. Williams didn't beat the shift with bunts or adjustments. He made the league bend with brute force. But his name lives in the rule that eventually killed the tactic born to stop him. Now, every clean single through the right side is a Ted Williams tribute, whether hitters know it or not. Roberto Clemente rule. Roberto Clemente wasn't just a right fielder. He was a force. Cannon arm, 3,000 hits, 2-time World Series champ, and the soul of the Pittsburgh Pirates. But it was what happened off the field that changed MLB's rulebook forever. On December 31st, 1972, Clemente boarded a plane to deliver aid to earthquake victims in Nicaragua. The plane crashed shortly after takeoff. No survivors. He was 38. Tragedy hit the league like a line drive to the chest. Players die. But legends don't die young. And yet, Clemente was gone. Normally, players had to wait 5 years after retirement before Hall of Fame eligibility. But this wasn't normal. Just months after his death, the Hall waived the waiting period. Clemente was inducted in 1973, unanimously. That decision set a precedent. If a player dies while still active or shortly after retirement, the 5-year rule can be waived. It's never been abused. It's rarely used. But it's there, because Clemente forced the league to make space for something bigger than protocol. The rule is rarely mentioned because no one wants it used. But when it is, it carries weight. Clemente's impact stretched beyond baseball, humanitarian work, pride for Puerto Rico, dignity in an era that offered little. MLB couldn't wait to honor that. So now, every time a tragic loss threatens to be buried by bureaucracy, the Clemente rule opens the doors early. It's quiet, it's respectful, and it ensures that legends don't have to wait for what they already earned. We don't just do the weird stuff, we do the real stuff. Subscribe for more stories that hit deeper than the stats. Rule 5 Player Rule. In theory, the Rule 5 draft was meant to give overlooked players a shot. In practice, it turned into a game of shell trades, future considerations, and a roster move so vague it needed its own glossary. The player to be named later. By the early 2000s, teams were using the Rule 5 loophole to stash players, draft them, hide them, and flip them in roundabout ways. It got messy. Enter the Cole loophole. In 2011, the Pirates drafted Garrett Cole first overall, but couldn't sign him right away. Instead of waiting, they delayed the contract announcement until after the signing deadline and finagled a workaround using a PTBNL clause. It skirted the intent of the Rule 5 draft and raised eyebrows across the league. MLB responded with stricter limitations. A player must now be under contract before he can be traded. PTBNLs can't be drafted players. And Rule 5 picks? If you don't keep them on the 26-man roster all season, you lose them. No more hiding arms in AAA purgatory. The fix wasn't flashy. It didn't sell jerseys. But it slammed the door on a weird little loophole that teams had started stretching like taffy. The rule got tightened because front offices got too clever. Now, every time a team drafts a fringe prospect and considers a swap, there's a limit to how foggy things can get. The Rule 5 game still exists, but the rope is shorter, and the loopholes are mostly stitched shut. Backstop coach rule. In early baseball, the field was more suggestion than structure. Chalk lines, optional, coaches' boxes, mostly symbolic. And sometimes first and third base coaches wandered so far out of bounds they might as well have been playing left field. Then came the chaos. Coaches started using their freedom to get closer to runners, distract pitchers, or block throws, especially near the backstop. One too many close calls, and MLB had seen enough. The league enforced a quiet but critical rule. Base coaches must remain within the designated box while the ball is in play. Simple? Sure. But it had to be written because without it, base paths became obstacle courses. George Smith, way back when, was one of the early repeat offenders, hovering, crowding, drifting toward the action like a human decoy. The rule now has teeth. Step out of the box mid-play and you risk interference. Stay too close to the catcher and it's a violation. No more creeping into camera frames like a sideline ghost. It's a containment measure, more than a punishment. Most fans never notice it, but without it, every infield play would be shadowed by a guy in a windbreaker coaching third like he's stealing second. MLB didn't just draw a box. They drew a line between fair assistance and unfair advantage. The next time you see a coach glued to their little square, remember, it's not by choice. It's because someone abused the freedom so badly, they had to legalize standing still. Pitch clock rule. For decades, baseball moved at its own pace, slow, deliberate, and allergic to urgency. Games stretched past 3 hours. Batters adjusted gloves like ritual. Pitchers circled the mound like it owed them rent. Fans yawned. Attention spans evaporated. MLB had a pace of play problem, and it was only getting worse. So in 2023, the league finally lit a fuse. The pitch clock. 15 seconds with no runners, 20 with them. No more wandering, no more staring contests. You step in, you throw. Or you pay the price. Automatic ball for pitchers, automatic strike for hitters. It was radical. The rule changed everything. Tempo, rhythm, even psychology. Pitchers couldn't milk the moment anymore. Batters had to be ready by the 8-second mark. Timeouts? Limited. Walk-up songs? Truncated. The era of drifting through innings ended overnight. But here's the twist. It worked. Games dropped by 30 minutes on average. More action, fewer pauses, and fans noticed. Stadium energy went up. Highlight reels got tighter. Even broadcasters had to adjust their pacing. This wasn't just a rule change. It was a cultural reset. The pitch clock didn't punish slowness. It erased it. Suddenly, baseball was urgent, intense, alive. Sure, a few veterans grumbled, some got burned, but the sport moved on. It had to. Now, every glance at the scoreboard includes a ticking number. Every pitch is a race against silence. And the game, finally, is playing to the clock like every other modern sport. Welcome to baseball, version 2.0. Foreign substance rule. Pitchers have always looked for an edge, sometimes in plain sight, sometimes buried under a glove flap. For over a century, foreign substances were baseball's open secret. Spitballs, Vaseline, pine tar, rosin, and sunscreen smoothies. But in 2021, MLB finally cracked down like never before, because things had gotten out of hand. Or more accurately, stuck to the hand. The catalyst, Spider Tack. A commercial grip enhancer originally meant for strongman competitions became the pitcher's new best friend. It created absurd spin rates. Four-seamers rose like elevators. Sliders broke like whips. Hitters couldn't touch anything. Offense nosedived. Batting averages sank below 240 league-wide. Something had to give. So MLB dropped the hammer mid-season. No warnings. No grace period. If umpires found foreign substances on a pitcher, glove, belt, hat, hands, it meant ejection and a 10-game suspension. Umpires began mid-inning pat-downs like TSA agents. Some pitchers got visibly flustered. Others stripped on the mound to prove innocence. It was weird. It was hilarious. It was overdue. The rule didn't outlaw rosin, it outlawed the secret sauce. Anything beyond the legal mix got you run. Spin rates dropped overnight. Some aces looked mortal. Some disappeared. The game recalibrated. Now, pitchers still grip, still sweat, still improvise. But they know the margin is thinner than ever. The mound is cleaner, at least on paper. And every time an ump checks a belt buckle in the middle of July, it's a reminder. For all its traditions, baseball will eventually enforce them. If you're still watching, you're one of us. Hit subscribe and keep going down the baseball rabbit hole with us. Ghost Runner Clarification Rule. In 2020, baseball went weird. Pandemic season, empty stadiums, piped-in crowd noise, and a new rule that made purists faint: the Ghost Runner. In extra innings, each half inning started with a runner on second base. No hit, no walk, just a freebie. The idea? Speed up the game, avoid 17-inning marathons, and reduce pitcher usage during a compressed schedule. It was supposed to be temporary. It wasn't. By 2023, the Ghost Runner was permanent, but with it came confusion. Could teams reuse the same runner? What if a guy got hurt? Did it count against stats? Could it be a pinch runner? The rule had all the elegance of a choose-your-own-adventure gone wrong. So MLB cleaned it up. The runner must be the player in the batting order directly before the leadoff hitter for that inning. If that guy left the game, it's the previous sub. If nobody's left, then sure, use a pinch runner. But you can't just stash Usain Bolt on the bench and unleash him in the 10th. The Ghost Runner isn't a loophole, it's a speed bump. Statistically, the run counts as earned, but not against the pitcher. Managers now keep flowcharts to track who's eligible. The once silent rule now has its own PDF appendix. It's still divisive. Old school fans hate it. Broadcasters try not to roll their eyes, but the games end faster and arms stay fresher. And every time the 10th inning starts with a man already halfway home, you're watching a rule that was built on urgency and clarified by chaos. Catcher's mitt size rule. There was a time when catcher's mitts looked like science experiments. Extra padding, extended webs, oversized pockets. They weren't just gloves, they were traps. Designed less for catching and more for smothering. These Franken mitts turned borderline pitches into strikes and wild tosses into easy pickups. The problem? They got a little too good. By the mid-20th century, catchers had figured out that bigger meant better. Bigger mitts frame pitches better. They could expand the strike zone without moving their wrist. And with pitchers throwing harder than ever, the oversized glove became a cheat code, especially for catching knuckleballs and framing borderline strikes. So MLB stepped in. The league imposed strict regulations on catchers' mitt size. Maximum circumference, depth, and webbing were all standardized. You couldn't roll out with a pancake-sized trap anymore. The rule was about fairness. If the glove gives you an unfair edge, shrink it. Even modern mitts have to stay within those boundaries, and umpires keep an eye on anything suspicious. The move didn't neuter catchers, but it forced skill to matter more than gear. Pitch framing became an art, not just a glove trick, and equipment makers had to get clever without getting bigger. Now, every time you see a catcher casually snag a 98-mile-per-hour heater or pull a borderline pitch into the zone, remember, he's doing it with tools that are legally capped. That mitt could be bigger. It used to be. But the rulebook trimmed the fat and made defense a little more human. Luxury tax rule. There's no salary cap in baseball, but there is a tax man. And you can thank the New York Yankees for that. In the late 90s and early 2000s, the Bronx Bombers flexed their checkbook like a cheat code. They bought every all-star that wasn't nailed down. Their payroll dwarfed half the league, championships followed, complaints followed louder. Small market teams cried foul. The league didn't cap spending, but it needed to discourage reckless payroll inflation. Enter the competitive balance tax, better known as the luxury tax. Teams that spend over a set threshold pay a tax on the overage. The more years you exceed it, the steeper the penalty. Repeat offenders, even worse. You don't just pay more, you lose draft picks, international bonus pool money, and any semblance of financial efficiency. It's not a hard cap, but it's a guilt trip with a calculator. The Yankees were hit early and often. The Dodgers later. The Mets recently. Big market teams now have to weigh their roster decisions against real economic consequences. Want to add a $30 million arm in July? That'll be $42 million with tax. And the price only goes up the longer you live above the line. Some teams treat it like a speed bump, others like a cliff. But every front office today builds their budget with the tax line in mind. The Yankees didn't break the rules, they just forced them into existence. The luxury tax didn't stop spending, it just made it feel expensive in a whole new way. Mound visit limit rule. Once upon a time, mound visits were infinite. You could stroll out to the pitcher anytime the vibes felt off. Manager, catcher, pitching coach, everyone took turns. Games crawled, runners stood around, viewers switched channels. The mound became a therapy circle. It wasn't always abuse. Sometimes it was strategy, sometimes it was stalling. But either way, it turned 9 innings into a glacial slog. So in 2018, MLB finally cut the cord. 6 mound visits per team, per game. That's it. And yes, that includes the catcher jogging out to talk mechanics, when the bases are loaded and the count's full. You use one, it's gone. Hit the limit? You need umpire approval to visit again, and that's not guaranteed. Exceptions exist. Injury checks, pitching changes, cross-language emergencies. But the leash is short. Suddenly, teams had to choose their words wisely. Strategy had to be delivered faster. Games flowed better. The dead time vanished. The move was part of MLB's wider pace of play push, but it tackled something deeper: control. Managers couldn't micromanage every pitch. Pitchers had to trust signs, trust instincts. And fans? They didn't have to watch another 3-minute summit to decide on a curveball. Now, every time a catcher sprints halfway and gets waved back, that's the rule in action. Silent, effective, no drama. Just a quiet fix for a loud problem. Baseball didn't ban conversation. It just put a timer on it, and the game's better for it. Stick around. We've got one final twist before we wrap this up. And hey, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Instant replay rule. For over a century, baseball treated umpires like gospel. What they saw or thought they saw was final. Blown calls were part of the drama. And then came a parade of disasters. Home runs ruled foul, tags missed, phantom outs called safe. One by one, fans and front offices lost patience. The tipping point? A-Rod's phantom slap in the 2004 ALCS. Or maybe it was Armando Galarraga's perfect game that wasn't. Doesn't matter. The theme was clear. Bad calls in big moments were eroding trust. So in 2008, MLB dipped its toe into replay, for home runs only. Fair or foul, gone or not. By 2014, they went all in. Managers could challenge plays. Umpires could consult headsets. The New York Command Center became the game's new overseer. The replay system didn't erase controversy, but it shifted it. Calls got overturned, some weren't. Fans yelled at screens instead of umps, but the accuracy, way up. And in a sport defined by inches, that mattered. Now every slide at second, every bang-bang play at first, every glove tag at home comes with a second opinion. Not just gut instinct, frame-by-frame analysis. The rule isn't perfect. It still misses things. It still eats minutes. But it turned finality into flexibility. Baseball didn't lose its soul. It gained a rewind button. And every time an umpire turns to the dugout and twirls his finger, it's a signal that the game has evolved, from memory to memory card. Baseball doesn't evolve on purpose. It evolves because someone breaks it. A pitcher throws too fast, a hitter shrinks the strike zone into a shoebox. A coach wanders where he shouldn't. A front office finds the seam in the system and pulls. And each time, the rulebook follows, dragging its feet like a bureaucrat late for work. These players didn't cheat. They didn't hack the game. They just pushed it. They played so well, or so weirdly, that MLB had no choice but to redraw the lines behind them. So, the next time you see a weird rule tucked into the fine print of the MLB handbook, know this. It probably came from a player who refused to color inside the lines, and forced everyone else to sharpen their pencils. I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.